Yeah, if anyone's listening that knows Chris Pratt, just send me a DM. They are getting a lot right. They are, and I don't want to make it a war of plants versus animals. The real war is processed versus whole food, right? That's like the real war, and that's what the vegans can agree on. Most plant-based people, it's called whole food plant-based diet, right? That's what they call it, and they are leaning into whole foods. The problem is squarely what you eat, not exercising more. But exercising more is obviously amazing. Everyone should exercise more, but it's not the main driver. It's not genetics. It's not any number of things that people blame it on. It's food. Food matters most. And I saw that. So I made up something called Hard 30, and it's only 30 minutes twice a week. So I am only in the gym, only doing strength training 1 hour per week. And I've had very good results.
Wellness isn't black and white, so why should your choices be? On High Energy Life, we dig into nutrition, health, and science with an open mind, inspiring you to make choices that actually work for you. Our mantra? Embrace nuance, ask questions, and always reserve the right to change your mind. Now enjoy today's episode. I'm your host, Carly.
And I'm your host, Alex. Your background is in engineering, I believe, and so nothing nutrition related. So what specifically was it that convinced you to start digging deeper into nutrition, and specifically the idea of let's start a podcast about nutrition?
I just want to ask
Yeah.
you, would you at all have predicted that this is where you'd be in life?
Oh, wow. Absolutely not. No idea. I never even thought about health or food or nutrition my whole life. It's something that, well, there's two sides. One is most people don't really think about it that much, right? If you look at the entire United States or westernized countries. And also, I was always playing sports and just, relatively okay. And that's kind of part of the story is like you're relatively okay until you're not. And so it was around 30 when I actually lost both my parents. So that was definitely the main thing that happened that changed the course of my life. And it's also when you can't really get away with things anymore. Like I could get away with it till I was 30 because I was active. I was always trying. Like I wasn't like a health nut. You know what I mean? I never thought about it, but I was trying, right? I was like, oh, I need to work out. I need to run. I need to eat the food pyramid. I need to do all the things I was told. So I was trying and it wasn't working. I think it's like kind of the sad reality of it. It's like in theory, some of that stuff, the mainstream stuff sounds good, right? It sounds right. And in practice, it doesn't really work. It's like a slow poison, I think of it as, right? It's like this slow process that just slowly kind of makes you gain a pound a year. That's kind of the statistic is, you gain a pound a year, you wake up, you're 60, you're like 35 pounds overweight, and you have prediabetes and heart problems and this and that. And then you get on the medications and all that. And that's kind of what happened to my parents. They were trying to do the right thing, not eating out. Like, going out to a restaurant was a huge treat for us. It was a huge treat to go to McDonald's like once a month, Like we were doing the right things. They were not obese, but they were just slightly overweight and then more overweight and getting that visceral fat, getting the prediabetes, getting all these things that no one told them about that was even a problem. And so losing them really woke me up. It changed my diet. This is when, this was about 12 years ago. I'm 42 now. I actually credit Mark Sisson and his book, Primal Blueprint. So my friends were reading that book, changing their diet, getting rid of processed foods, and they just looked amazing. I was like, wait a second, what do you, it just is working so well for them. So another little thing is a lot of times it's people around you that can really help. And they weren't begging me and hounding me to do it. They were just leading by example. And I changed my diet. All my problems went away. Like I lost over 20 pounds of fat, really. So my body composition completely changed. Didn't count calories, didn't do any stuff like that. I just changed the foods I ate. My problems went away. I was starting to get all these little problems, the over-the-counter medications, the acid reflux, like joint pain, the allergies were always there. All this stuff just went away though when I changed my diet. And so to answer the question, I just actually saw one too many vegan documentaries. Actually, that was part of it too. Is What the Health was the real turning point. I watched that about 9 years ago, and I just said, no, no more. This is not right. This is not accurate information. This is, kind of this agenda with plant-based people that really are doing this for moral reasons, really. And I need to make my own version of something more accurate. And I just went all in and quit everything else and have been doing this full time for 9 years.
So the What the Health, the vegan documentary, that was kind of the final straw that convinced you to start being more public and starting the podcast specifically?
Oh, yes. So I didn't go to that part too. Yes. So exactly. So 9 years ago, I just made a website. This is a little secret too for people out there with big ideas. These days, it's so easy to make a website. 9 years ago, it was not that hard either. And I just made the Food Lies website that still stands to this day. And now it was a thing. Right now, because I had a website, I started contacting doctors and PhDs that I respected, and I just linked them to the website, and I said, I'm making this. And they're like, oh, this is a thing. I'd love to be part of it. And so it's pretty amazing that you could do that, right? It's like I didn't have a film background. I mean, I grew up making videos, and I had a little high school film background, but that's nothing official. And with enough effort and time, you can do a lot. And so then I just started posting on social media, started from 0 followers with no credibility. And then I realized I need to have a podcast too, right? I was doing Indiegogo too to raise money, crowdfunding for the film. And so, content, podcast, Peak Human, and just slowly getting enough money together to make this thing.
One of the hardest things for us is to convince people or even try and get the point across of how important nutrition is in outcomes in your life and how just changing what you eat can drastically alter how you feel for the better or, depending on what you're eating, for the worse. So I'm sorry to hear about your parents. Unfortunately, it's an all too common story today. That event for you, was that the immediate event that made you start questioning and looking around and saying, my parents were doing most things right, or so we're told, and this is how it ended up? So was that the kind of the initial event, and then you noticed other friends that seemed to have success, and just wanted to learn more about what they were doing? Is that kind of the path?
Yeah, it really was both of those kind of simultaneous things. It was really lucky that my friends were getting into it at the same time, because if they weren't getting into that and kind of telling me, hey, there's more out there to this information, I might have just been like, oh man, unlucky, my parents' bad genetics, and I would have just gone on with my life, right? So it really wasn't just that. I really had to learn that no, it's not just genetics. It's not just calories in, calories out. It's not, just your destiny. There's so many different narratives these days that they blame, different things that are outside your control instead of blaming taking personal responsibility for your health. So to answer the other part of your question about how much food matters, that's the core thing I'd learned, is that food matters most. And this is actually in episode 1. So Food Lies is now a 6-part series. And we have episode 1 done. We've been showing it around, trying to get Netflix, we have a production company. There's a lot to get something onto a main platform and finish it. But we have we have episode 1 ready. And in episode 1, part of what we need to do is set up the problem and then realize that the problem is squarely what you eat, not exercising more. But exercising more is obviously amazing. Everyone should exercise more, but it's not the main driver. It's not genetics. It's not any number of things that people blame it on. It's food. Food matters most. And I saw that. So it was lucky that I didn't change all my diet. I actually started exercising less even. I used to think I needed to jog for hours, just like 3 times a week. I need to do like 45 minutes, an hour of jogging. And it just wasn't getting me anywhere. And these narratives, it just, they don't really, they're partly true, right? Because exercise is great and running can be great, but it's not all there is to health. And it's not genetics. Yes, there's some role of like some genetics. Some people are more predisposed to certain things than others, or some people may not get away with things as more as others. I think it's more of, I don't think there's no obesity gene, but I think some people have the opposite, where they are genetically gifted, where they have a higher metabolism and, things are a bit easier for them and they can get away with more. But that doesn't mean that, but there's no obesity gene. I don't believe in that. Also, to zoom out about genetics, genetics don't change this fast. Like this all happened in the last 50 years pretty much, and genes don't change in 50 years. So it really is the food. And so we do set up all these arguments against the other things and just show people that this matters most.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you talked about what the health, the vegan documentary, and there's a number of them out there. One of them that is most powerful on the visuals and the emotional aspect to me is Game Changers. Mm-hmm. And you've interviewed as well yourself a wide range of experts, and you've interviewed a handful of vegans turned borderline carnivores. In your opinion, what do you think the biggest thing that people that eat a plant-based diet are missing? Because to set a background on this, for me, I am extremely impressed by anybody that is making a conscious decision on what to put in their mouth. That includes vegans, that includes carnivores, everywhere in between. But then, of course, there's the actual science of how our bodies work, and what is the dietary pattern truly healthy for you, both short-term and long-term? And so, again, the question is, what do you think is the biggest thing that vegans are missing in their quest for both personal health and planetary health?
That's a really good question, because they are getting a lot right. They are, and I don't want to make it a war of plants versus animals. The real war is processed versus whole food, right? That's like the real war, and that's what the vegans can agree on. Most plant-based people, it's called whole food plant-based diet, right? That's what they call it, and they are leaning into whole foods. They're leaning into health in general. I mean, really just someone taking this as a forefront of their life, right? This is my identity now. I identify as a healthy person. I think that's actually the number one thing. After all these podcasts, all these interviews, all these different people, I talk to thousands of people per year, right? All I do is run around town talking to people, going to conferences, everything. And the number one thing is you deciding that you are healthy now, like that whatever the diet is. I am like, that is the number one thing, because I know people, personal friends, that know all the information, listen to my podcast, know what to do, have tried it, done it for a month, but then they don't do it anymore because they have not made that personal decision of like, no, this is what I do now. This is me. I have a new identity. They just were like, oh, wow, actually, I know how to be healthy. I lost 10 pounds last month and I was doing it, but then they're just out drinking and like eating nachos. It's just they haven't made that commitment yet. So the vegans have made that commitment. They've moved towards whole foods. They are getting a lot of things right. I think the last like piece of the puzzle, like the thing that they're missing is the animal nutrition. Like even if it's not a majority of your diet, like I eat over 50% calories but from animal foods. I've never measured calories, but I know it's like up to even 80% calories. Because I say calories because animal like fat has a lot more calories. So like your plate can be half plants and half animals, but if you actually do the calorie math, and you're eating animal fat, you're probably getting 80% from animal foods. So I think humans need a baseline foundation of animal nutrition, and animal protein specifically, and the fat is more bioavailable and complete and usable by the human body. And so that was kind of a big turning point for in my journey, learning about beef. Like I was avoiding beef. I was avoiding red meat forever. My family avoided red meat. And I remember when I was late 20s, right before this happened, 30, I was eating lean chicken and like whole grain everything and all this stuff, avoiding. I never ate red meat. And then I realized how many nutrients, how nutrient dense red meat was. Like it's huge. It has so much in it. And I also learned about the bioavailability and completeness. Like the vegan arguments like, oh, well, if you eat rice and beans, they actually have all these amino acids. I'm like, kind of, but they're not complete. They're in smaller amounts and they're not bioavailable. Like your body can't use them as easily because they're bound up in the fiber or they're just not in the right form. And so I learned, yeah, about even like the food chain is there for a reason. Like the vegans will also say, oh, there's like all these crops and fields of grain. Like, why are you feeding those to the animals when you could just eat them directly? Like, no, that's actually part of the beauty of nature and the circle of life and all this stuff is that animals move up bioavailability. They upcycle nutrients into a form that's better and easier for our bodies to absorb. So once I learned that, everything kind of clicked into place. I realized that red meat was not the problem. I basically think that vegans would really benefit, even if they just ate oysters, actually. Like you could eat a plant-based diet plus some oysters and boom, you're getting all this B12, zinc, selenium, copper, you're getting iron, you're getting all this stuff. But so I guess the main thing they're missing is there's a lot of foundational nutrients from animal protein.
What would you say to somebody who's struggling more with kind of the emotional philosophical side? It sounds like your journey was more you didn't eat the red meat because it was bad for me. It was bad for my health. And so I think that can be a little bit easier to kind of switch sides, for lack of better terms, than when it's an emotional decision or a philosophical ethics decision. So what would you say to somebody who's struggling with that side of things?
Yeah, no, it's a very valid point, and that's usually kind of where I land with people when I talk to vegans. I've converted vegans along the way, actually, many times actually, and the moral side is hard. You really have to talk about nature and the circle of life, and like kind of like really think about how the world works and how we got here, and our history as humans. And I Well, one part of it, I credit Tara Couture. She's amazing. She's in Food Lies. I interviewed her on my Peak Human a couple times. She's just a really great person. She's a homestead rancher. She spent her whole life learning about nutrition and how to like grow her own food. And I remember this one line that's in Food Lies that she's talking about how if she were to eat just plants, she was up in Canada and she has all this land. She's like, I would have to kill everything in this land. I would uproot trees. I would have to pesticides, herbicides, kill everything, and to try to grow crops. And she said, like a salad, like it looks so innocent. Everyone thinks it's so great. And she said, it's death on a plate. There's just no blood. And it's my favorite line. It's because the vegans, they think they're morally superior because there's like no literal blood on the plate, right? There's no meat, like juices. Really, that's more like juices, not blood in the meat. But it has appearance of, oh, this is this fresh salad and there's all these great ingredients. And there actually is a lot of death on that plate to get you that salad. And you have to completely clear ecosystems to grow crops. You have to kill small bugs and stuff. You kill larger animals, like to grow crops, you're actually killing field mice and ground nesting birds and baby deer and all these things. And then another thing I learned about that I didn't even think about, I talked to an Australian farmer. There is a lot of death even after you harvest. So in the harvest, before the harvest, there's death, but I didn't think about after. So he was talking about once he or his neighbors, I don't remember if he does grains, but if you harvest the field of grains, now there's hundreds of thousands of small animals that die of starvation from not having their food source. So they were eating like the corn or the wheat, and now all of a sudden it's gone. And now there's depend on the side of your farm, tens of thousands of animals that are just dying of starvation. No one thinks about this stuff. And it's like it's sort of a convenient thing for the vegan people to just ignore all the death, but it exists. For something to live, something must die. And that once you kind of learn that, then you realize there is no way to eat without killing something. It's just, are you going to admit that something died, or are you going to kind of hide it by, well, I'm just eating the plants and I actually didn't kill anything on this
Yeah.
plate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, we had a client once who was Buddhist, but he ate meat. And he had a really interesting view on kind of this whole philosophy of valuing life. And he believed that he should eat the largest animal possible because he's taking one life that can then feed him
Mm,
for like 6 months or a year versus, if I'm eating a bunch of rabbits or, small animals, I have to kill a bunch of them. So I just thought that was
that's
a really
a
interesting
great
take on
point.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, really great point.
And there's also the aspect of, and once you acknowledge that any dietary pattern does result in death, then again, there's the conversation around, do I value one life versus many lives? Does it depend on the intellect that we assign to these animals?
Mhm.
Does it depend on how close they are to humans? Does it depend on, is it the intentional action of killing an animal for food versus the side effect
Hmm.
of killing a bunch of rodents in the process of producing my plant foods? So there isn't necessarily a wrong answer, but and I think what you're getting at is the first step is really it's acknowledging the reality of whatever action you do take, there is death as a
Yep. To
consequence.
be alive, you
And
must
then you
kill.
can have a real
Hmm.
conversation from there.
100%. Because you could argue for all of history about this. Yeah, which life is more valuable? But the real thing is that it is just sort of opinion at that point, that we know something must die for something to live. And then if we look beyond that, it's, well, what about human flourishing? Like maybe we should prioritize that. And from all that I've seen, we humans, like our natural diet, how we do best is with animal foods in the diet, and that can help people's health. And we could do so much if I could wave a magic wand and and people went away from processed foods and added more animal foods, like really just a simple swap, like we could save trillions in the healthcare system. We could save trillions of life years of people getting healthier, living longer, not getting these diseases. So we have to think about that too.
Yeah, I like that. You're not saying that every vegan has to be carnivore. Like those are two ends of the extremes. It's like just a little bit, even if it's like 5% meat.
And we just recently talked with Peter Ballerstead
Oh yeah.
about both planetary health and human health, and how do you evaluate each individual aspect, and where does the importance lie? But ultimately, at least in probably the space, and we both would agree that there's extreme overlap, and really what is healthy for humans is also healthy for the planet. But I do want to
Yeah.
transition a little bit into, so you've been talking with experts across the field and non-experts alike, people that are just experiencing their own life and trying things out for almost a decade now. You've been recording episodes on Peak Human, and in parallel, you've been producing Food Lies. So those are probably a lot of conversations that nobody has heard yet, that we're super excited to hear. So through this whole journey, I'm curious, how has your point of view evolved?
Mm, yeah. It definitely has actually. So I think there's kind of a thing that happens in anyone's life is they go from the standard kind of way of eating, whatever it is, and then they move to something new, and then they think that that's everything, that has all the answers, whatever it is. They go vegan, and now everyone has to be vegan, and this is incredible. Look at all the things that changed. Look how healthy I am, and that's sort of a natural human thing, and I did that too. So it was no different. I really went low carb. Nine actually. So I started changing my diet about 12 years ago, and I just cut out carbs. I thought carbs were the absolute enemy, and I was doing like keto and low carb and like trying all these different things in that world. And if people go back and listen to Peak Human, they're all still there, and it's all the low carb narrative. And I think it's great, and it helps people, and it's super valuable, and it helped me, and it still probably is the best way to reverse obesity and type 2 diabetes and all that stuff, right? I still think it's fantastic. But I did have to like learned a lot along the way of, well, maybe there's more to this story. Because I was making food lies, and I'm like, this thing's going to stand for 10 years, hopefully, easily, right? People are going to be watching this. I can't be wrong. Like, I can't make a whole thing and be wrong. But then I kept thinking about all the outliers, or the things that disproved the carb. Really, it's like it's called the carbohydrate insulin model, which is a scientific term of like, you eat carbs, they have a higher glycemic impact. The higher glucose causes more insulin. You get insulin resistant, basically just from the carbohydrates. And there's all these populations like the Japanese, or like across Europe, across time, there's even like hunter-gatherer type populations closer to the equator that ate more plant foods and eating more higher carb diets, and they were fine. All these populations fine. Japanese super healthy. Even bodybuilders, I'm like, oh, these bodybuilders are doing physique shows. Not that bodybuilders are the pinnacle of health, right? I have all kinds of problems with their diet, but they were getting shredded using high carb, low fat, high protein diets, right? So I was like, what's the deal here? And there's different ways to explain it away. And then I realized it's really not the carbs, it's the processed carbs. And it's really not the fat, it's the processed fat. And then I realized it's really not either of these things. It's really like kind of the nutrient adequacy, or the nutrient to energy ratio of your diet, or like really zooming out. It's like people who are healthy, they're eating higher nutrients and lower energy from fats and carbs, right? So that kind of makes sense. It's that we can't just blame carbs or fat, because there's too many things that disprove that. There's too many groups of people that have lost weight in either camp. And so again, it's like what matters more is the refining and the processing of either one of these, right? So I'm eating whole food, sort of animal based, and I'm avoiding processed carbs, and I'm avoiding processed fats, which would be seed oils and these highly processed industrial oils. But I still eat butter and beef tallow, and I still eat carbs from potatoes, or I make rice with bone broth, and I actually cook it and then cool it and then heat it back up again, and then it has more resistant starch. And I eat fruit, all these things, and I feel amazing. And I didn't gain weight, maybe a little bit in the transition period where I'm adding more carbs in my diet because my body wasn't really used to running on carbs anymore. But I got super healthy, super lean, and feel better eating the whole food carbs. So yes, I really did have to kind of admit that I was wrong and I call it camp, no camp. It's like, I don't want to be stuck in a camp. It's like, I want to look at all sides and see what the truth is. And this also goes back to what I started this with, of you kind of do the first thing and it works for you, and then you just get really tied into that, right? And you become really zealous about that. And I think people need to kind of graduate. That's sort of like freshman level thinking. It's like, you're in high school. The high school level thinking is just do what the government tells me, and you just like eat whatever. Then you get into college and you're a freshman. And you're like, oh, well, this is actually it. And then I'm trying to be at like senior level, graduate level thinking of like, okay, well, how does all sides work? Like, let's not be wrong. And so I think people need to kind of graduate to that level, and things will make a lot more sense. And it's actually, you just have a better quality of life. You have a more accurate view of nutrition. Like, I now feel like I'm set for life. I don't have to like get caught up in the next diet fad, or I can see through diet fads. I'm sure there's going to be many more to come, but then I'm like, okay, well, what good things are they doing, or what are they actually doing with this diet? Well, they're actually, getting more nutrients for less energy, right? They're going into whole foods. They're eating more quality proteins. Like, that's like the foundation of why this new theoretical diet works. Not that it's some magical thing where, oh, well, we have to eat this superfood, or we have to do, they all have these gimmicks. And I realized it's not really gimmicks. It's really like a pattern that is like months and years.
Well, that's the. I think that's going to be the forever Brian Sanders catchphrase is camp no camp.
Yeah.
I love
Oh
it.
yeah.
You're really speaking my language of, and I found the same thing where I personally went keto for a couple years to heal some health issues, and I felt so amazing. And I felt great after 2 weeks, and I felt so good that I continued with it. And I'm still relatively low carb. I mean, for me, uh, I'm more of an endurance athlete, so I'm biking
You
100,
are.
150 miles a week. And so
Okay.
for me, 100 grams of carbs a day is relatively low on average. But of course, I observe, I read the science, and then I observe people having so much success on a keto diet. And we just went to the COSI conference in Las Vegas, which is a very low carb keto style conference. And it's quite invigorating to be around so many like minded people. And a lot of the doctors and researchers and people there do admit that, keto doesn't have to be for everybody. But there are a lot of people that are very much along the lines of keto is the only way. But then I also observe people that do seem to have lots of success eating lots of carbs. And so it sounds like, just like you, I look at that and say, okay, well, we don't have all the answers. Keto is not necessarily the be all end all.
Yeah, like the bioenergetic diet. I thought that's where you're going with that. Where it's, I don't know if
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
heard that. Yeah, so like
Of
that for
course.
me,
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on? You're eating basically a hummingbird diet of sugar and you're able to lose weight and heal. Like that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, like what's going on. But the problem I have with that is you're not getting those fat soluble vitamins because you're not eating fat. So I don't think it's a great long-term strategy, but I could definitely see how in the short term it could have a place for somebody.
Well, bioenergetic view does include lots of healthy fats, but
Does
they
it?
are higher carb for sure.
So there's different versions of it. Yeah. So I'll tell you. So it's pro-metabolic or bioenergetic. And yeah, I've looked into this for many years. Ray Peat is kind of the hero of it, which sadly we lost a few years back. And here's the thing. The foundation of that diet is still in animal foods, nose to tail eating, like all these ancestral principles that I believe in that make sense. It's just, I think it's like there's two options. And it's like if you get the foundation of animal foods and like he's like talking about bone broth and collagenous bits and like eating organs and eating whole foods and all this stuff, animal fat. Yes, it definitely includes animal fat. But then instead of leaning into fat as fuel, they lean more into carbs as fuel. But it's very specific carbs, right? They're into like kind of like orange juice sometimes. So there's extremes within the bioenergetic camp. So generally, the bioenergetic point of view does make sense, and it's fine because it's again foundation of the right foods, and then they're just running more on glucose instead of fat. And then to the extremes, yes, like even in the last year, there's like the sugar diet. People call it
Yeah,
the
I
sugar
think
diet.
that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
Yeah, where
yeah.
it was like
So that's
only fruit.
basically the carnivore of bioenergetic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's the extreme like thing. And this is another thing I've learned along the way. Any diet works in the short term, and it's kind of what you mentioned. And that's why I don't think about that. People try to debunk me by saying, "Hey, have you heard of the Twinkie diet? The professor ate the Twinkie diet and lost weight." I'm like, I absolutely know about this, and that's kind of proving my point. They're thinking it's disproving my point, and because to update, the audience, it's a guy, Mark Hobb, I think. He was a professor, and it was a convenience store diet. It wasn't all Twinkies, and he drastically reduced, kept it calorie controlled and lost weight. But he only did it for a month and he felt terrible. He was like, I felt sick. I was getting sick. Like all these problems popped up. He was starving all the time. It was a nightmare. So I'm like, yes, of course. I understand calories I understand energy balance. Like there is such thing as energy balance, but we're talking about you want more nutrients and less energy, calories. Like you need to have your body get what it needs and then yes, eat less extra energy, extra, right? So it's like you can lose weight by just cutting all calories, but then you're getting less nutrients as well, right? That's kind of what he's doing. So a convenience store diet is very low nutrient diet, right? And then he's just cutting calories so much that it's like forcing the body to lose weight, but you're getting less nutrients, you're getting less protein, you're less vitamins, minerals. This is not sustainable. Any diet, you can go vegan. I mean, I don't care if people want to do like some kind of cleanse for a month or, some kind of whatever reset and be vegan, 100% plant-based and do that. You will be fine for 1 month. You're not going to die. Your body has nutrient
Resilient.
stores. It has enough protein. It has enough minerals to kind of get through that. But it's just not the optimal way. And of course, you're going to lose weight and doing that. But that doesn't mean anything. That's kind of like relying on nature's fallback plan. Like, of course, our bodies could be adapted to something like this because for all of history, there was times of drought and famine, and we couldn't get animals. There's disasters. So many reasons why we couldn't get our primary source of food, which has always been animal foods of some kind. And so, of course, the body can switch over and just run on like whatever we could find and like tubers and fruit and honey. So that's what kind of the sugar diet is leveraging is that, well, they're going really low fat. So yes, in your extreme case, they are going super low fat. So normal metabolic is not super low fat. It's actually, they do have the foundation of some animal fat. But like the extreme would be the sugar diet, where if you go almost zero fat and you go super high carb and sugar and you still get your protein, I mean, you can still lose weight and you can still be okay. But it goes back to like, what is long term? You need your nutrients, all that.
Yeah, the calories in, calories out argument on either side is so frustrating to me. Of it's okay, it's a great high level idea of what you ultimately do need. You need to be using up more calories than you absorb. But that's like, so you're in Texas, that's like saying you need to go north to get to Montana. Okay, yes. But if that's
Generally.
the only instruction you're given, it's not useful.
Well, that's what I say. I mean, this is sort of a cliche by now, but it's like, what if you hired a financial advisor and it's like, how do I become rich? And all they say is, well, just make more money than you spend. You're like, all right, well, thanks, dude. I'm not giving you any money for that advice. Sorry.
So you're talking about in your transition from keto into adding more whole food carbs. You used the phrase "I was wrong." Now I'm curious, when you said that, did you mean specifically that there's something about nutrition and that I'm doing that I don't have everything correct and there may be other ways of doing things? Or did you say I was wrong in the fact that you were specifically feeling downsides to what you were doing that you've resolved now that you've added
Oh,
back in carbs?
well, no. It's the first one. I was wrong in that I thought like that I knew it all and I didn't, and that there's like a bigger message here. But I still, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I still think low carb is a great strategy for a lot of people, right? There's a lot of people that are very overweight, and it's a very good strategy. And I think it's perfectly great. And I guess, but there's a small caveat is I did have a little of some downsides. Like I think if you go too carb for too long, maybe not everyone. I don't know. I know some people. I know I'm friends with like Sean Baker and Anthony Chafee. Dr. Anthony Chafee. These guys have done pure carnivore for many many years, and they seem to be fine. But I hear a lot of stories of people who go too low carb for too long and they kind of lower their metabolism. This is kind of the pro metabolic argument, the bioenergetic argument is like you want to raise your metabolism, you want to raise your body temperature, you want to be able to eat more calories in general. And they say that, back in the day, we actually ate more calories than we do now, which could be true. And I kind of believe in that if you're eating real food and you're not eating processed foods and all these bad oils and refined carbs, you probably can eat more food because your body knows what to do with that food. And you have a higher body temperature. Like we're supposed to have a 98.6 body temperature. My body temperature was in like 97.3 for a long time doing low carb. And I know other people that were doing super keto for super long and they were always cold, and they assumably had low body temperature. They couldn't eat that much. They were kind of stuck in this like small amount of food. And I know some people personally, and I like saw them, and they could barely eat that much because they would gain weight if they ate more. And so I think there is something to it that you can kind of lower your metabolic rate is what I was going to say, and maybe have lower thyroid function if you are going too low carb for too long, right? That's not saying it's not a great intervention. I just don't think it needs to be done like insanely hardcore for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And well,
Yeah,
to
and
finish that story, I did when I did add more whole food carbs. I'm still not eating like tons of carbs. It's not like, I'm like pro metabolic people eating 350 grams of carbs per day, but my body temperature went up. I slept better. Little things like cold hands and feet, like it kind of went. So yeah, I think it is a little bit stressful on the body, which is kind of the pro metabolic argument that, yeah, it could be stressful, and I feel better doing it.
Mm-hmm. And that's so powerful of part of our core idea in coaching is to get people to become more in tune with their bodies, how they're feeling. And maybe some people, Anthony Chafee, he's feeling fantastic long-term carnivore, and that's great for him. But you may have felt a couple side effects from that you feel better, and so by adding in more carbs. And so it can be very individual, but the core idea is stay in tune with how you're feeling. Don't be afraid to make adjustments. Don't be afraid to try something different. And worst case, you can go back to what you were doing before.
Absolutely.
I do have to ask for my own selfish purposes. So you've talked multiple times on your podcast about, I think it was a decathlon that you competed in. Was it fasted? You competed fasted?
I did. I was a pentathlon. The only one I could find was a pentathlon. So it's a lot easier fasted. But it's the 5 events. It's these track events. I went up to the actually it was the North American, Central American, and Caribbean Championships Masters, competed. And yeah, this was back in the lower carb days. And I did it fasted. It was like noon to 6 p.m. And I mean, I think I ate like a piece of liver as a goof, but other than eating a piece of liver like during, I don't know, before I competed, I didn't have any food. Yeah. And I didn't eat till 7 p.m. that day. The last event was the 1500 meter, and I came in second out of everyone in all the different age groups I was doing it with. I came in second overall in that without food. So it was cool. It was cool to do. And, there's just kind of a different metabolic way to do things. And I was training at UCLA at the time up to that, and the athletes there were like, "What is wrong with you? Where do you get your carbs?" And I'm like, "I don't need carbs." It was so funny because it was breaking their head because all their trainers are telling them is how to carb up.
Mm-hmm. And I've experimented myself. So I've biked 60, 80 plus miles at a pretty high intensity, completely fasted. And I regularly bike low carb. Now I've interviewed researcher Andrew Kutnick. You probably know the name.
Yeah.
About his research is finding that, okay, maybe 10 to 20 or so grams of carbs an hour is really beneficial for high performance endurance athletics. So I do a lot of experimentation with myself, but both fasted, lower carb, and high carb, just to try and see how it's affecting my performance. But of course, there's always the bias in there, and I know it's not a blinded trial at all. I'm not in the lab, I'm not in the real world. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on now that you have added more carbs in? Again, maybe not high carb, but more carbs. Do you think you experience a difference in your athletic abilities at all in either fueling?
So yeah, this is a hard one. For one, do you know of Zach Bitter? Have you heard of
Yes.
Zach Bitter? Yeah, so I interviewed him. He was in Austin, actually. I never really see him, but he is at least was a world record holder. I don't know if all those records still stand in like these 100-mile races. And so he would do like very low carb, and then during the race he would like do like small amounts of carb, like some like dextrose or some, but he really was fat adapted for a lot of it, and had great success, right? World records. But it really is better for those like longer sports. And I think there could be something with the more explosive things that could be useful to have more carbs because you have like topped up glycogen stores if you have carbs that you could do more explosive things. And like I mean in the decathlon, which is what I was training for and I did one, there's 100-meter dash, there's long jump, there's high jump. You kind of need the explosive part. And looking back, I'm like, I don't know if I didn't really feel that explosive. Like I felt like I could go forever, like doing low carb, but I didn't feel like explosive power. But also I remember I did carnivore for 10 days. Like I never was carnivore. I never really bought into it, but I tried it just to see and nothing actually changed. I think my diet was already so dialed in and good and optimal that like I didn't have any weird side effects, symptoms. People say, "Oh, there's this transition period, all this stuff." I didn't feel any different. I felt just as good. But I remember I even made a video on social media. I played basketball back in the day when I was doing this 2 hours every Wednesday. We ran out of gym, run games, 2 hours. And after that, when I was carnivore, I felt amazing. And I did wind sprints after playing basketball for 2 hours straight. And I was just like, I feel like I could, go forever. So I think there is something to it. But then I don't know. I mean, I guess the counter argument is maybe if I just wasn't hitting my top speed in those sprints, or maybe like, but also who cares? Like, it's not like I'm in the Olympics. Like, I don't need to get like a 10.9 100-meter dash time. It's like, so theoretically, say I run like a 12-second 100-meter dash on low carb, and I could have maybe run 11.9 on if I had carbs. Like, well, that doesn't really matter for any person, really.
Yeah. Have you talked to any like pro athletes? Like how are people reacting to this? Especially like the pros who, a lot is on the line for them if they were to try something out like this.
Yeah, I think for certain sports, some people are trying low carb and keto. And I think it is those more endurance type sports. But I think like athletes are dialed in. They very much care. There's millions and millions of dollars on the line. And so if keto was optimal, I think more people would be doing it. So that like I factored that in. It's like really the fact that in the mainstream sports, there's not many people doing it. It's sort of a sign of like the proof's in the pudding, right? And I just think it's just better for certain, just like low and slow type sports.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find it a really interesting conversation, but it's also kind of selfish for my own sake because it's something that I personally love, but many people are not into the high end athletics. So to get back to more general health, I'm curious the experience that you've had with people in your life that you knew very well before you started this whole nutrition journey. What has their reaction been from just watching you from, I mean, you were pretty typical engineering American in your 20s and young 30s, and suddenly, I mean, even just you mentioned you lost a lot of weight, and so you just appearance wise, a lot of changes happened. So how did people react to what you were doing?
It's been great actually, and some people have jumped on board, and it's awesome to see. And they listen to my podcast and they do it and they message me and it's great and they've seen great results. Other people have kind of just gone about their life and they're kind of like the typical 40-year-old. And I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I had a friend who does this with me in Austin and is in shape and went back home to Hawaii with me, and we went on my friend's boat and we were swimming and all that. And actually, so my two friends that got me into this are still doing this, and they do still look very in shape and very healthy. And my friend from Austin, who just saw all my other friends for the first time, he was like, whoa, like, what is going on here? Like, you have you three that look like you're 30 something, and then you have all your other friends look like they're high 40s. It was like this drastic difference. And so again, I hate to throw people under the bus. Hopefully they don't hear this podcast, but there's a massive difference in us three who do this and the people who don't. And some of these friends, there's actually two specific friends along the way that have done amazing though. I have a friend who lost, I think, 65 pounds in 10 months and went from the dad bod, like, big belly into like six pack. And he went all in and did it. And it's incredible. And it's changed his life.
Wow.
So, kind of a straddling line between athletics and general wellness. Most people do want to have a good-looking physique. So call it vanity. No worries. I like to have a good-looking physique. Most people think that it all comes down to getting in the gym. And that is important. Being physically fit is really important. But just give people a rundown of what your workout routine is. Because from my understanding is people would be, if they saw a picture of you shirtless, people would be shocked at how little time that you spend actively in the gym.
I would also maybe just add, can you pair that with like your typical meals in that same
Yes.
daily schedule? Yeah.
I would love to do this. Okay. So I made up something called Hard 30, and it's only 30 minutes twice a week. So I am only in the gym, only doing strength training 1 hour per week, and I've had very good results. And this is actually from interviewing a lot of the people through Peak Human and Food Lives, interviewing exercise scientists, PhDs, like researchers on this topic. It's not like I just made this up myself. And it's using drop sets to failure and compound movements. So the quickest way to explain it is stuff like dips, pull-ups, squats, like very simple exercises, not like isolated like bicep curls. And I do it with like a high weight, and then I go down. Most people go to the gym and it's an hour and a half or an hour, and they do the warm-ups, and then you keep adding the weight, and it's this whole thing. I learned about this thing, drop sets to failure, where say I grab a 50-pound dumbbell and I hang it by those waist chains. You can tie, have like a belt around your waist and hang a weight off it. And I do as many dips as I can with a 50-pound weight. Then I throw it off, do as many dips as I can immediately with a 35-pound weight, throw it off, immediately do all I can do with 25 pounds, and then drop that and then do as many dips as I can with no weight. So that was 4 sets right in a row, and I got to failure. Like really what you want is signal to your muscles to like get bigger, get stronger, break them down, get to the deep levels of micro tears that cause that muscle gain, and do it quickly and then move on. And then I would do squats in the same way. I actually do dumbbell squats. So I grab the 55-pound dumbbells and I hoist them on my shoulders and do squats. And I just keep doing the same kind of routine to failure. And it's a very efficient way to get strong and then get on with your day, get on with your life. And I say go hard, then go home. That's my thing. It's like, let's just get it done. It's efficient, and I'm done. And I do the push day, which is all the push exercises, right? Dips and squats and bench press type thing. And then I do a pull day, which is all the, more like pull-ups, deadlifts, the pulling exercises, and I'm done. And then I do other stuff, like I sprint once a week and I play beach volleyball. So I'm not saying I'm sitting sedentary other than one hour per week, but in strength training, it's only 1 hour per week. And then it's really not that much more other than that. Like I do 20 minutes worth of sprinting. Maybe it's 30 total with like warm-ups and stuff. And then, I do a couple hours of beach volleyball. Like I absolutely encourage people to do all the other things and different types of sports and movement and walking too. Like, I'm always moving around, walking, all that type of stuff. But when it comes to strength training, I think people overthink it, think it's too hard or too cumbersome, right? To fit in your schedule, all this stuff. And so they don't do it. So part of why I do this is because no matter what, I can fit this 2 30-minute sessions per week in my schedule, no matter what. If I'm traveling, I've done this at hotel gyms. I do this at my friend's house in Hawaii. I do this my apartment complex. I've never even had a gym membership since I was in UCLA, and your tuition comes with a membership to the gym. I have not had a gym membership. I have not had a gym membership, and I get good results. And it's partly because I can do it consistently. I'm gonna do it no matter what. I've made a deal with myself. No matter what, I'm gonna do these two little workouts, and it works.
Yeah, that's really inspirational, I think. Honestly, where most people, again, they think that in order to be in shape, I have to give up my entire life. So at that point, why is it worth it? But no, it doesn't. You do need to get to the gym or do something at home. You don't need a gym membership, but you do need to put in the work. Just do it intensely for a short amount of time, 1 hour a week, and then general movement. And you're going to be in great shape. So that's the movement and the workout side of things. Getting back towards the nutrition, and like Carly's question of kind of the food that you're eating alongside, I'm gonna throw in
Hmm.
a little bit more to that question, or ask about the papers that you are writing,
Oh
because in your
yeah.
whole journey of discovering starting out with keto and discovering there's more to the story, and then continually discovering there's more and more to the story. It sounds like you've kind of landed on your theory, and I do pretty much agree with your theory from what I've read. You sent me the rough drafts of the papers I read through. But what is your theory around kind of the overarching key themes of nutrition and healthy eating?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give the simple answer first of what I eat. I did 2 meals a day for quite a while, and I still do it. Some people in the pro metabolic world are talking about eating more often and maybe doing 3 meals or even four, and maybe that's better. I love 2 meals a day. I love to eat a lot. Like I just like to eat, and
I'm
I don't want to
similar.
snack. And so I only eat lunch and dinner. I'm not hungry in the morning. I haven't eaten today. It's about noon. I get all my nutrition in 2 meals, and then I don't think about food. And I love that, right? I think it works for so many people. Some people do OMAD, 1 meal a day. My friend who lost 65 pounds very quickly, he did OMAD. But, maybe that's not necessary for everyone. So my 2 meals, I cook my rice and bone broth cooked and cooled, like I said. I have eggs. I have ground beef patty. I have a local ranch. I get make a big ground beef patty, maybe some cheese on it. I have pickles, sauerkraut. I have like a jar of jalapenos, like pickled jalapenos. I eat like an apple and some blueberries for dessert. Quote dessert. That's it. So that's my lunch almost every day. Like I can't get tired of it. It's been many, many years. Really since about 11, 12 years ago, I've eaten similarly. Like I just grab, well, other than the carb part, but like I grab a protein, eat some beef, I fill it in with some, fermented vegetable stuff like pickles and sauerkraut, and it's actually really easy, right? It's like you can just have jars of things. It's not like I'm preparing some insane like 12 ingredient salad. That's another thing with that mainstream health is people make it so complicated. They're like, you need to eat all these fresh foods and this and that, and it's like a whole production. No, you could have just some eggs and some meat in your fridge and some jars of pickles and sauerkraut or whatever you like to eat, and just like have a bag of apples and a thing of blueberries, and you're set, right? Like really, it's that simple. And then for dinner, it would just be a different version. Maybe you get some salmon in there, you get some fish, lamb, like whatever, chicken, doesn't matter. You get your protein, you have your very simple sides, and I just have some fruit for dessert, and it's like unstoppable. Like I love it, and that kind of will lead into the papers and my bigger theory about food. I feel like I call it the E equals MC squared of nutrition and food. And it's really what I mentioned earlier. It's the nutrient to energy ratio. And sometimes it gets a little nerdy, or it's not that sexy. It's not like some new diet, or it's really just a simple concept of just the reality of human biology. is that we eat food to get nutrients, and for all of history, that we ate what was around us, and we hunted animals, we gathered shellfish, we did anything we could to get the animal foods, and we had whole food on the side, and that was high nutrient and low energy. It was high proteins, vitamin, minerals. Sorry, not low energy, but appropriate energy, and we got the right amount of energy from fruits, tubers, honey, whatever was there, and we did fine. It was high nutrient and the appropriate amount of energy. Now the modern food system is low nutrient, high energy, right? Even if you're not eating tons of processed foods, most people's diets is pretty low protein and vitamins and minerals, and pretty high in sort of empty calories, empty carbs, empty energy, right? I say energy as in carbs or fats, like together as one, like that energy source. So if you're eating low nutrient, high energy, your body is going to overeat kind of no matter what. So part of what I'm trying to answer is, why does everyone overeat when no one wants to? No one wants to be fat or sick, but everyone is by definition overeating because they are overweight. So we know something happened there with the calories, right? And so, but why, right? Because there's so many diets that try to restrict calories. So why don't they work? And it's really almost a mathematical formula, is that your body is trying to get enough nutrients, protein, vitamin, minerals. And if you have low quality, nutrient poor foods, which most people eat, which definitely includes all the processed foods, you are going to have to overeat to get the nutrients your body needs. And you can't break that system. You can't trick it by using willpower. That's why so many diets can work in the short term, is you can force yourself in a shorter term to try to eat less overall, but you're not getting your nutrients. So eventually your body is going to overeat. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. The only thing I would add to that is the emotional, social component, because especially in our culture, all of these empty, dense foods are normalized. And when you go to eating real whole foods and you're feeling really great, if you're surrounded by people that are still in that same standard
Hmm.
American trap, it's really, really hard to stay on track.
Very good point. And I do mention this in the paper, and I'm actually turning this into a book. It's called A New Theory of Food, and it's almost done. It's been 8 years in the works, really. And it really, really needs to answer that question as well, the societal part, emotional eating. So basically, I say, you learn all this. I have all these principles, but now we have to think about the other side, psychological side, and you're completely right. And so the best thing to do is at least set yourself up for success. So most people, and I do this too, right? I still have these societal pressures too. But if I eat these big nutrient dense meals, I'm just seriously not hungry. So if I'm out at an event and there's like snacks and there's all this food, if I am like actually not hungry, it's very easy for me to not want the snacks and desserts, stuff like that. So I think, yes, you need to, or you need to work on yourself. Go see a therapist. Like, there's many parts of eating that's really emotional, right? And so that needs to be thought of, but the best I can do is set people up for success.
Yeah, I really agree, and love the idea of providing your body the nutrients, that nutrient density, the nutrients compared to the amount of calories that you're consuming. Because I find the same thing of when I'm out and about and there's just the standard American diet fare in front of me, there are certain foods that I love that are not healthy.
Mhm.
I do very much enjoy them, but I don't have the cravings to have to eat them. And so I'm in a place where I'm providing my body the nutrients that it needs. It's satisfied, and at that point, I have control. And sometimes I decide to enjoy a bowl of ice cream, enjoy a piece of cake, enjoy a slice of pizza, but I am in complete control over it. The food in front of me is not, it hasn't captured me and is forcing me to eat it like
Mhm.
so many people.
Yeah. Well, and I'm okay with that too, and I do that too. I don't like once I got out of the diet camps and like broadened my understanding of food and just look at nutrient to energy ratio, which is kind of nutrient density, but it's over time too. It's like I look at food over a month. I'm like, over this month, am I getting like the right nutrient to energy ratio? And human body is really amazing. Like it's very forgiving actually. That's why so many people, they argue about diets, be like, well, I eat this and I'm fine. I'm like, yeah, your body can compensate. It's pretty amazing that, and so, I mean, I don't want to tell people that, and then it turns into everything in moderation, and then you're eating this stuff every day. But the point is, if I look at over a month period, having some ice cream on the weekend or going to a friend's birthday and eating, what's available, isn't the end of the world to me anymore. And I will compensate for that in other ways by like eating more nutrient dense foods after and like less, you know, just have to be a little more strict. But it certainly could fit in to a healthy diet. Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds very realistic. It's like life will keep happening, birthday parties will happen, it'll be a holiday. So it's like those things will happen. So you have to figure out a way, to incorporate them into your life or you're not really living.
But have a positive attitude about it too. Because I know some other people, famous people actually in the nutrition world, that are very stressed out and obsessed, and they can't eat anything off plan, and it's just like a nightmare. And I think they're causing some more stress and more problems by being that rigid. And if I am at the party and I eat the cake, I am not stressed out about it. I am not beating myself up about it. And this matters. This is like real science. It's not some woo-woo thing. Like your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings do control your cortisol levels and your digestion and your everything, right? It seriously is hard science that this controls what happens with your metabolism and your body. And so I choose to believe that this is great. At the time, I'm like, I'm having a great time. I'm eating the cake with my best pals and we're good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I love that. Give yourself some grace.
One of the other themes in the papers that you're writing has to do with the processing of foods. And I find many conversations in kind of the conventional nutrition health world, there's all these debates that to me are just distractions on with what really from what really matters. But so coming to the processing conversation of right now, the big thing in the nutrition world is a food processed? Is a food ultra processed? How processed is it? And what does that mean? And we can't make any progress unless we have this specific definition of processed food and ultra processed food. And yet sometimes a food can be more processed and we at least think it's healthier than a less processed food. But in your paper, you introduce a really unique for today's conversation idea of ancestral processing. And so talk about just briefly about the concepts that you're proposing around how a food is processed and what it ultimately means for our health.
Yes, I call it traditionally prepared. So this is a big thing, and I've been trying to get it through the new administration and Bobby Kennedy, and luckily I know Callie Means, who's in the White House, like writing all these policies, and it was just in there signing bills and stuff. So I pitched this to him. I just released a podcast with him yesterday. And I was basically I'm pitching him on the podcast about this definition and how they need to like include it in the new definition of processing. That there's whole foods, which people can understand, and there's processed foods, which people generally can understand. But there's a whole new category in the middle of traditionally prepared foods. And these foods are not processed in the same way. They are, yes, mechanically processed, they are altered, but they do not lower the nutrient density. They do not add in fake ingredients. These are things like sausage, real sausage, right? Like traditional sausage, not, I'm sure there's terrible sausage out there with sugar added and all this stuff. Real sausage, ground beef, sauerkraut, pickles, cheese, butter. Like these are all traditionally prepared foods that are not adding in extra refined carbs and refined fats, right? They don't have, that's also part of the paper is the level to which something is bad for you, the level of processing usually is how many more grams of added fats or sugars are in that food. Of course, there's tons of additives and MSG and preservatives and food dyes, and that matters as well. But really, the biggest driver is adding more refined fats and refined sugars into a food makes it worse for you. It's lowering that nutrient density. It's lowering the nutrient energy ratio. And traditionally prepared foods do not do that. So right now, the current definition of processed foods includes ground beef, sausage, pickles, all these things as processed foods, and it's insane. It's harmful to people, the public health, because they don't get it. They're like, they have the same category as like a Go-Gurt, those little like Go-Gurt pouches with all this added sugar and whatever in it. That's the same as ground beef on the thing. Like, this is not true. Like the people need to realize that traditionally prepared is a completely different category.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really excited to read the final editions of your papers. I think there's a lot of really, really powerful concepts in there. So thank you for everything that you've been doing in this space. And so right before we wrap up, coming back to food lies. How much, what can you share on what the timeline is on food lies? Can we make any expectations on when we might be able to see it either on Netflix or another platform? Where are we at?
Oh man, I have no timeline. I really wish I could. It's really a matter. It's kind of in the production company's hands at this point, and then it could be even in the streaming platform's hands after that. And I really hope it doesn't get delayed because the time is now. Like, I very much know the time is now. We flip the food pyramid upside down. Like, people are getting into this stuff. It needs to happen. I'm kind of held up by getting a celebrity on board. I think that's just a big piece of the puzzle that really matters to the big streaming platforms and matters to like get it out in the world, whether you think celebrities are valuable or interesting or not. I know there are some that are aligned, and I'm talking to some that are aligned and get it and good. And so that's where we're held up. And then there still is more work to finish the 6 episodes. So I just wish I knew more, but I just know it needs to come out soon.
Yeah, no worries. Well, if there's anything we might be able to help you out with, we'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, if anyone's listening that knows Chris Pratt, just send me a DM.
He's my best friend.
Yeah. If I say that enough, someone's going to say they know him. So
there you go. Eventually somebody will. Well, is there anything that we didn't ask you about that you just have a desire to talk about?
We covered a lot. You sent over a couple questions that we didn't get to. So in the last couple minutes, I remember one good question is, I use this ancestral lens, and you're like, can we do that in this modern world that's just so messed up? And I thought that was a really interesting question. And the answer is, we have to. It's our only option. I know the food system's messed up. It's so hard to get grass-fed, grass-finished, good meat, all this stuff. But there's no other option. Technology is not going to save us. We're not going to, invent lab-grown meat that's somehow going to be better than real meat. The answer is not in more technology. It's just really going back. All animals on the planet Earth eat what they have eaten for all of history. They thrive on what they ate for all of history. And Dr. Michael Rose, one of the most famous, I forget his title, but he's a biologist, researcher, longevity, all this stuff. He said this. It's it's a fact. And so, yes, we need to just kind of look to the past, but do the best we can in this modern world.
Yeah, that's a great message to end on. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. This is wonderful.
All right, so you are much more well-known than we are. So thanks for letting us No Names interview you. But is there anywhere that you would like people to find more about what you do, your podcast, any other information you put out, websites and such? Where can people go to learn more from you? Because you have so much great, insightful things to share in your decade of being very core into this space of of human nutrition.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll keep it easy. Sapien.org. Sapien's kind of my philosophy on all this of just sort of looking to our past, aligning with nature. You can't cheat nature. Sapien.org can link out to anything else I do. Get the free food guide, get on the email list. I rarely send emails. They're very, helpful, hopefully, if I do send emails. And Food Lies, if you search any social media or YouTube, you just search for Food Lies and I'm there. That's it. Food Lies and sapien.org.
Perfect.
Simple. I love it.
There you go. Well, thanks again for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. We're here to help you put what you've learned into action. Learn more about our coaching program at highenergylife.com. That's HIenergylife.com. Until next time, embrace nuance, ask questions, and always reserve the right to change your mind.